Hello, wonderful friend. My name is David Ault, and I want to welcome you to The Gathering. Whether you are someone who has been here many times on this YouTube channel or you're finding me for the first time, again, thank you. And I wanted to share with all of you that for nearly half my life now, my calling, my profession, my creative expression to the world has been as a minister. That particular divinity path was with something called religious science, a form of new thought, which is basically a pathway of study that helps dismantle dualism. It is an invitation for us to begin to explore what it means personally and collectively to begin to unravel all of the ideas of separation, of the mass othering, the us and them, and to see God in all things. That's just kind of a brief overview. But I tell you that because that spoke to me long ago as a young man. And I knew that there was something there for me. And I arrived at the threshold of that opportunity to begin that kind of study because I was in a great deal of pain. And there's a beautiful popular phrase that says, pain pushes until the vision pulls. And I can't tell you exactly why the vision pulled me into becoming a minister, but it did. And I'm so grateful that my level of resistance was low enough that I allowed that vision to pull me. And it has taken me far and wide. It has given me incredible experiences and opportunities and beautiful continual learning lessons in order to be with people and to be considered either their minister or their spiritual director, but most importantly, to be a fellow on the same path of unraveling all the things that are housed within this idea of separatism, the us and them, in order to get to the basic principle and the root that indeed there is only one reality. It is an intelligence, it is a love indefinable. Call it God, call it whatever it is that you want to call it, but it is there. It is infallible. And it's, again, invitational and inviting us to the degree of our willingness to keep removing all of the obstacles and all of the layers, even all of the allegiances and the things that we have been taught. In other words, it's sort of like the great path of unlearning. And I share that because I want you to hear me when I say, I am still practicing. Even after all of this time, even after all of this absorption, immersion into it as a profession, I'm still practicing. I'm right there with you. And dare I even say that I have accepted and become appreciative of the fact that there's no arrival, there's no finish line with regards to the journey that our souls have gifted us in order to reawaken and return, if you will, to the full acceptance and embodiment of that oneness. And so, as long as we are in these forms, we know that the journey is one that is unending, and I get to be okay with that. I get to celebrate that actually, because how far do I want to go? How deep do I want to go? How much do I want to embrace the mystery and the beyondness of what I think is definitive, right? And so, as I speak to you about that, I also hold very gracefully the small r reality that so many of us share with regards to the pain and the suffering of humanity. And hear me when I say you can hold both things. You can hold that relative reality, and you can also hold that awareness of the absolute, and then find your path, find the way in which your pain pushes you to the vision of your expression. And as we do that together in all of the beautiful creative ways in which we serve and we show up in the world to help each of us remember, I wanted to take this opportunity today to address probably what I feel is not just my own immediate hurdle and challenge, but I'm guessing might be yours as well. And that is just the central message of loving your enemy, loving anything that represents the othering. So if we even go back to the teachings within the Bible, there is the Sermon on the Mount in the book of Matthew that says, "But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you." In the same Gospels, in the book of Luke, there's the Sermon on the Plain. I love there's a Sermon on the Mount and the Sermon on the Plain, and the message is the same. But I say to you who hear, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. In the book of Romans, Paul's letter said, bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse them. Also in the book of Romans, there's an echoing proverb that says, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. 1 Peter, do not repay evil for evil or reviling for reviling, but on the contrary, bless. For to this you were called. For this you are called. That's the vision. There are so many other examples of all other kinds of wisdom teachers that I'm sure that you revere. There is personal guru Neem Karoli Baba, who's taught very simply, love everyone, serve everyone, and remember that all is God. Ram Dass, who said, everything in life is there as a vehicle for your transformation. Use it. The Taoist principle, the obstacle is the path. It's the way. The very popular practice of Ho'oponopono, of repeating that Hawaiian blessing about asking for forgiveness, basically for our forgetfulness and for seeing anything that had to or promoted othering. And then there are all these other examples. The Buddha, who said, hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal rule. So he taught metta, or loving kindness toward all beings, which included enemies, seeing them as mirrors of our inner work. Lao Tzu in Taoism, I have 3 treasures. Guard them and keep them safe. The first is love. The second is moderation. The third is humility. With love, one is fearless. With moderation, one is abundant. With humility, one can fill the highest position. Rumi, the Sufi mystic poet, said, out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I will meet you there. The great Indian saint Ramana Maharshi said, your own self-realization is the greatest service that you can render your world. Your own self-realization. Thich Nhat Hanh, the mystic Buddhist monk, said, when you begin to understand another person's suffering, then his or her suffering becomes your own suffering, and the idea of an enemy disappears. Mahatma Gandhi, said the best way to find yourself, or I like to think of uncovering all the obstacles of your already understanding and beautiful knowledge of self. The best way to find that or reconnect to that is in the service of others. And Martin Luther King taught us that darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And that is a form of what we know to be agape love. On and on and on. Teacher after teacher, teachers that I know who have said the same thing that you could add to your own personal list, continuing to urge us to practice this dismantling of othering. And so I recently returned from India. And one of the things that I had wanted to do and was able to do on this last trip was to travel to a northern area where there is a cave. This cave is called the Babaji Cave. And if you know anything about the lineage of Paramahansa Yogananda, and you know about his world famous spiritual classic, Autobiography of a Yogi, he talks about the fact that his own self realization and self awakening came from this lineage that is attributed to this Indian saint known as Babaji. Babaji lived in this cave and is reported to have given an initiation, a Kriya Yoga breathing initiation, to a tradesman known as Lahiri. And I believe one of the things why this was so celebrated is that Lahiri was not asked to give up his position as a husband and a father and a business person, but that he was to incorporate this restorative prana breathing practice that would remove all of the veils of separation and to then go back into his human world and to continue to teach those people the same thing that had been given to him. And so what was so kind of revolutionary is it was often believed in those times that the only people or the only way to master that was to rescind all earthly things. But here he was being given this opportunity to not rescind his earthly life, but to take this life, to take this palette, to take this landscape of his soul's journey, and to do whatever he could in order to bring that offering of reawakening to whoever was interested. And so he did. He took this gift, this blessing, this awakening that Babaji had downloaded to him, offered him, and he became a devout practitioner of this practice. He taught a man named Yukteswar, who was also a very devout spiritual being. That man became the guru of Paramahansa Yogananda. Yogananda, if you are familiar, became instrumental with helping bridge Eastern and Western thought together, bringing Eastern spiritual practices of non-dualism into a Western world. And perhaps you read Autobiography of a Yogi. I know that I did many times. I know that many people have. And there was always this kind of pull to go, wow, is there really Babaji's cave where that first took place? Is it possible to get there? And so after many, many, many years, I determined that I was going to do what I could to make that happen. And I did. And I climbed the mountain and got to the cave. And one of the glorious things about the experience was that it was early enough in the morning to be able to have private time in the cave. When Because it was winter, usually in the summertime, the stories are is that people wait outside of the cave in mass and sort of have to do this rotation where you just get to go in and go out. But that was not the case for me. Providence smiled upon me, whatever. And I was able to go in and have a really lengthy, long, lingering saturation in the beautiful atmosphere that existed within this precious site. And the interesting thing, the thing that really was brought to the surface for me, the instruction that was brought to me, it was not anything revelatory. It was more to do with regards to all these things about loving your enemy. You see, as I was making my way up there, I was also holding the relative reality of just things that were going on within our own household. My husband is a federal worker and now is on the brink of losing his job, and many other things with regards to foreign aid and sustenance, and my own work in the nonprofit world and global education, and how tenuous all that is now, and how easily those circumstances lend themselves to substantiating and solidifying a hatred towards something defined as an enemy. So I'm holding this while I'm walking to this sacred site and I get to this cave. I am afforded the gift of this private time. And the only thing that continues to echo through these ancient walls of this cave is love your enemies. Love your enemies. All of the things that I listed from all of these revered beings. And as I sat there, I also noticed my resistance. I noticed all of the justifications as to the exceptions as to why one can, move that to a back burner. Like I said, I'm still practicing, right? Until I began to just notice the resistance, love the resistance, and then settle into the idea that, David, you already know how to do this. You've already been given example, practice, opportunity after example, practice, and opportunity over and over and over again in your lifetime to not only just be interested in this instruction, but to become invested in it. And it was more like, is this the time that you will become invested in it? And as I sat in the cave and I breathed and I noticed without judgment all of those things, I was very much made aware that the only assignment is to love what is, to love what is. As Ram Dass used to say, to take what is on your plate and transform it through consciousness until it feeds you, until it reminds you of that principle that the only reality is love, is God. And like I said, I want you to know that I too practice that, called to practice that, need to practice that, am only here to practice that. And something very revelatory came to me as I've been working at really wanting to articulate this for you with utmost integrity. And that was this. What makes this become something that's not just an interesting thing or a seasonal thing or a convenient thing, but something that I become invested in was I am willing. I am willing to be unattached to seeing myself as persecuted. I am willing to be unattached to seeing myself as persecuted. What that means is that the identity that I have created around all things David, the camaraderie of other people who have created identities that match that, have been very much a part of my world. They're the little subgroups or the little tribes where we find our loyalties, and we all agree that there are these things called persecution. And we're not denying, and I'm not even denying the truth of that now in the small R reality. But if what I said earlier is that I want to go beyond, I want to go beyond small R reality. I want to free fall. I'm now ready to free fall into capital R reality, which means that at some point in loving my enemy and blessing those who curse me, in praying for those who might choose to harm me, that I have to dissolve the identity of myself as someone who could be persecuted and harmed. Because love itself does not identify with any of that. It frightens me a little bit. It scares me a little bit to give a voice to that because, number one, there's still very much a part of me that I would say feels the need to shelter, help, fix, not just you, but myself. And I know that ultimately, even that, the vision must pull me beyond those types of approaches and be willing to deliver to you that singular message of how we might be able to love that which we have determined or defined as an enemy. So I'm sitting in the cave and I'm smiling because all I can continue to think about is the repetitive story over and over and over again that Ram Dass would share about his struggles. You know, he too, same journey, and he talked about how much he loathed, Loathed, loathed a man named Caspar Weinberger, a politician whose policies and practices were the very antithesis of what he felt was integrity and love and humanistic qualities. And yet, in his work, something propelled him to take a picture of Caspar Weinberger and to put it on his altar. You've heard me share this before. His altar was a place where every morning, as he did his devotional practices, there was a picture of Jesus. There was a picture of Buddha, of Krishna, of his own Baba, Neem Karoli Baba, of Anandama, all these other saints. And as he would greet each of them in his morning practice, he put a picture of Caspar Weinberger. And he would jokingly share that it was a long-term development, but he was willing to do that. And as I sat in the cave, I thought, am I willing now to stop talking about that story as a talking point or a spiritual illustration and practice it for myself? Am I willing to now go and tangibly, physically copy those pictures of all of these people that I am very easily being pulled down into an old, static, space of determining them in that realm of othering as the enemy? Am I really willing now to be invested enough to follow Ram Dass's example, to print their pictures and to put them on my altar? Am I willing to continue to find and open myself up to material that will help me support others and myself in keeping the fuel of this practice very much full? Am I willing to be a mouthpiece or a vessel by which, when you forget, I will help you remember, and hopefully, as I'm forgetting, you will help me? It's a beautiful reciprocity that we create in determining where we want to give our time and our attention to. And so I invite you today to look at that which you loathe. And what will be your practice? You are so welcome to use the same one about putting the pictures up. And I know that there are beautiful other practices. I know the power of the Ho'oponopono prayer. I know the power of other ways of breathing and visualizing and seeing and loving those things which we keep at bay, the things that dissolve the barriers around our heart. So many wisdom teachers, so many paths teaching the same thing. I believe it's time for those of us who are ready to really clean out our ears, to remove the justifications that shackle our heart, because it's only going to get louder. And so that doesn't mean that we have to be defeated or deafened by that noise. As always, I am here for you. I'm going to end this taping now, and I'm going to add to it an offering for a class. Totally up to you. Pay what you can. If you have something, if you don't, that's fine too. But it's a little gem of a spiritual classic that has sort of been off the radar for a long time. It was written in the 70s by a man named Thaddeus Golan, not as a new thought or spiritual book, but as something that he was trying to write down and explain through his own experience for friends. He made little Xerox copies and he handed them out to friends. But as many of these stories, it became so very popular that it ended up being published and becoming a bestseller in the early 70s. And it's called The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment. Forgive the gender specifics, but The Lazy Person's Guide to Enlightenment. So in the month of March in the year 2025, I'm going to offer 4 classes. The book is now a free PDF. I will give you the link to go to my website, and you can find that. And I'll do that little promo later. But I just want to provide you with whatever opportunity or nourishment that you might need. And together, we can take what it is that we loathe and transform it through our love. Blessing. Hi, friends. As promised, just a quick promo about this class coming up in March. 4 weeks, AM and PM, based upon what I would call a spiritual classic. Because when I share the title with people, they go, "Oh my God, I haven't thought about that book in years." It's called The Lazy Man's Guide to Enlightenment. Don't let the title throw you or the gender specificity get in the way. The Lazy Person's Guide to Enlightenment, written by a man named Thaddeus Golan. No aspirations for creating a spiritual bestseller. He just wanted to write something from his personal experience to help his friends, feel and eliminate their own pain and suffering. And that's what's so beautiful about it. It doesn't overextend into poetic phraseologies just for that sake. It's a synthesizing, beautiful, lasered pathway of study that can help any of us where we are. In fact, one of the most beautiful things in here is he says, whatever you are doing, love yourself for doing it. Whatever you are thinking, love yourself for thinking it. Love is the only dimension that needs to be changed. If you are not sure how it feels to be loving, love yourself for not being sure of how it feels. So many things in here that are championing for you wherever you are on your path. And I believe that this is a beautiful time for us to gather together to explore. You'll find all of the information of how to get in contact with me or register on my website at davidault.com. All the information about the course material and your little study sheet that I have created to give you, it will also be available once you notify and let me know. So, thank you for consideration, and I hope to see you in class. Thanks.